And obviously the business was, almost collapsing at various points then, and we were almost running out of money, and with the lawyer fees, we would have been, probably bankrupted. So that was very stressful. I think generally, it's Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong, and generally all at once. Life is gonna kick your ass, and it's so hard that everyone you love will die, and you will die as well. So that you've already lost the ultimate battle, which is like you will die at some point.
All right, guys, welcome back to the SquidTalk pod. Thanks for coming in, Harry Gestetner. We've known each other for probably 6 months now?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I feel like I met you. I hadn't known about you for a while, but got connected with him through my roommate, really successful entrepreneur. You've got an incredible story, serial entrepreneur, like starting little businesses since day one, which I love, because I think that really, it just builds on, right? I think everyone looks at what you're currently working on and they're like, damn, how do you even get there? But it's just slowly building, right? So I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited to dive in. Thanks for coming on, and welcome to the SquidTalk pod.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. All right, so dude, let's get right into it. I remember I was went to lunch together because you started FanFix, right?
Yep.
Massive tech company. Could you give us a little background on that first? What is FanFix, if this was a random person asking?
Yeah, FanFix is a monetization platform for content creators. So essentially, my partner and I saw my cousin blowing up on TikTok about 3 years ago now, and saw that he got tens of millions of views, he got a bunch of followers, comment section full of fans, and couldn't make any money. So we thought there had to be a better way. We saw, majority of creator monetization was through brand deals. We saw an opportunity in the direct monetization space and thought that creators should be able to monetize directly from their most loyal fans. So there were two big platforms. There was Patreon, which was targeting a much older generation, and there was OnlyFans, which obviously is very dirty and has a big stigma. And so we thought there had to be a clean, Gen Z focused, mobile first, TikTok first, exclusive content platform. So launched FanFix.
Dude, it's genius. And my creative director for my business is a big TikToker, not too active anymore, but he's probably gathered like 4 to 5 million between platforms. Sage Bender, I don't know if you have heard of him before.
Awesome.
He's like the biggest fighter on TikTok, or used to be at least. And he was telling me when he first started, he had millions of views every single week, but there was no way for him to make money off it except for brand deals. Mm-hmm. And they screw you, and you're kind of at their will. It just solves a huge problem. And now it's going extremely well. I remember you told me you started in college, right? With your partner,
correct,
who was your high school friend, correct?
Yep.
And it was just you two, scaled it up. That was 2 years ago when you started it? 3 years ago?
We started about, kind of came up with the idea December 2020, so about a little over 3 years ago, and then launched August 2021. Yeah, August 2021.
Nice, dude. And how big are you guys now? How many employees? What's the scale of FanFix?
Yeah, team's about 70 people, got kind of over 15 million users, and doing 70 million in revenue now. So
that's fucking crazy. What is that, 5% of the country? In terms of just to think about scale, 15 million?
Yeah.
So less 4% of the country. That's massive.
Yeah, in most of the world now, not in Asia, and not in Africa, not in India. So definitely still nations to conquer. But
absolutely, and those are when you're able to get in there, that's going to be huge for sure.
Definitely.
I don't know how big their creator economy is over there. If it's as big as, if there's much of an emphasis on media as the U.S., but you guys are already fucking killing it. So
thank you.
Congrats, that's sick, and it's inspiring for me. You're also 24, right?
23.
23, dude, even better, bro. So for everyone watching, bro, 23-year-olds built this insane company. I think a lot of people that are tuning in, listening, watching are probably the first question is how, right? It sounds so far away, right? But one thing, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, that you told me was, I was sitting down at lunch with you, and I was like, dude, what's your sauce? What's the secret?
Yeah.
And you were like, bro, this is my, I think you said 9th business. How many business endeavors have you had?
Something like that. There have been a lot. I think most of it, vast majority have been failures. I think it's just about shots on goal. And some people, I think people often ask me, how would you encourage someone to be an entrepreneur? I honestly wouldn't. I think it's something that you have to be. Some people get into it accidentally, but generally you have to be sort of wired for. You need a very high pain tolerance, and you need an insatiable itch to build, and just always wanted to be building things. And it's just always what I wanted to be doing on the weekends. Friends would be, I don't know, playing sports, playing Xbox. It's just like I always wanted to be building something, and got a lot of joy from it. So just always was trying things, and most of them failed, but eventually had one or two hits.
Dude, I think that's very well said. Honestly, my goal with my whole platform and in this podcast is to try and get as many people as possible to become entrepreneurs. I'm sure you'd agree with this. I think it's in a lot of ways the most important job, right? It creates innovation, right? It moves the economy forward. But I think you're totally right, and that you're not just you don't just all of a sudden find that spark one day. It's very rare, at least. Almost every single guest that I've had on, maybe even every guest, has been an entrepreneur since day one, starting little businesses. Can you give us a little background on some of the early ones you started? What was the first? I know you had a shoe one, you had a garage renting business. Tell us a little bit about the background.
Yeah, so going back a while here, but I think first one I was probably 11 years. Yeah, I was 11 years old. It was a clothing company called Legionary Clothing, and essentially, there was nothing very innovative about it, but just wanted to start a clothing brand, and so partnered up, or was attempting to partner up with a wholesaler, and then I remember we were talking over email, and then they wanted to line up a phone call, and it was going pretty well. And then we hopped on the phone. They heard my 11-year-old prepubescent voice, and that was that. That was done. So that was the first company, and then had a couple of other little things. I think next sort of notable one. I remember my cousin and I would go to the local high street and sell these scented pencils. And we dressed my cousin. I had my little suit. My cousin, we dressed in my dad's blazer. It was out of the movies. He'd have one of those massive blazers that was way too big for him on. And then we tried to start a kind of a storage facility company, basically out my garage. Tried to convince some of the local businesses to work with us. That one didn't go so well. We had an affiliate shoe website that actually bought rather than started. It was I was told a turnkey business. I think I bought it for £500 at the time, $700-800, and that didn't work. And then fast forward, had a freshman year of college, realized that it was I had a bunch of textbooks and a bunch of expensive furniture, etc. And most of my friends did as well, but we had no way to sell it. So thought there should be a platform for students to be able to buy and sell things from other students. Turns out that's actually a very common idea that a lot of people have had. It hasn't worked for anyone. Didn't work for us. I think more so because we didn't really get to launch. I had no technical experience, and we just couldn't really get the platform developed we couldn't build the product, and kind of got scammed with a couple of offshore dev shops. So that one failed, I think, just because of my lack of product experience. And then COVID hit as well, so launch went on pause. Then had a charity. COVID hit, thought that I had to do something, and so my friends and I started a charity called Fuel Our Heroes, and that ended up getting to probably the largest student organization in the country during COVID, and we raised about $500,000 for healthcare workers.
Damn, nice.
And had a team of about 140, and that was really good fun. And I think, just the building aspect, having a big team, having sort of, I think we had 18 hospital networks we'd partner with, was really an incredible experience, had very high impact. And then through that, saw the power of social media, and saw my cousin blowing up on TikTok, and ended up having the idea for FanFix, and then FanFix worked as well.
Dude, that's awesome. And I feel like anyone who's not an entrepreneur or they're new to that world hears stories of failures and they think waste of time, right?
Yeah.
Even my parents, I started multiple businesses when I was a kid, which I think I talked to you about, and they didn't do so well. One of them, I lost a shit ton of money from my dad, or my friend's dad, who invested a lot in us. And everyone looks at that and they're like, dude, this is a waste of time, right? You just wasted all that time when you could have been doing something else, right? But you're not wasting time. You're slowly building your confidence. You're slowly gaining more experience. And I mean, I feel like it would be fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, that if you didn't have all of those failures, FanFix probably wouldn't have been as successful as it is today, right?
100%.
You might not even have the confidence to go out and try and start it.
Yeah, 100%. I think failure it's like the Winston Churchill quote. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. So I think failure is not fatal. It's something that you, as an entrepreneur, you're going to face on an everyday basis. We fail, if not daily, definitely weekly, and probably daily. You're going to fail a lot of things. You're going to launch products that don't work. You're going to launch features that don't work. You're going to lose out clients to competitors, etc. That stuff's going to happen. I think you just have to let it fuel you rather than break you, and it should make you hungrier. I think that's the differentiation between a good entrepreneur, a good founder, and a bad one. Is failure fuels them.
Oh yeah. What do you think your biggest failure recently is?
God, I think I don't know about like one particular big one, but generally fundraising I think is definitely that you face failure quite quickly because you school doesn't teach you to get told no 10 times in a day and have to still sort of put yourself out there, still pitch the business and not lose encouragement. So I think fundraising is definitely a slap in the face when you first try, especially as a first time founder. There's a game to it, and obviously the more successful your business gets, the easier it gets. But definitely at first, I think that was a very quick crash course in rejection and failure.
How do you decide? I think that very well put, by the way. And that's I've raised money in the past, didn't go too well. I'm probably gonna have to do it again for the company I'm currently working on. So my question for you now is, how did you know, how long after starting FanFix from the original just like idea, or maybe we'll say when you really felt like you started the company to, what was the period of time between then and when you first went out and started pitching the company?
We had the idea and we knew we had to build a product. I as I said, had the business before where it failed because we outsourced to a bad, cheap offshore dev shop. So for this one, it was very, very clear that was going to do it right and go with a proper engineering team. So we
was that in the U.S. or different
US
country?
based, US based, and so we knew we had to get this thing built. We didn't know how to pay for it, so it's very quick. I mean, we signed a contract with engineers in January. We outsourced the engineering, which in hindsight was a bit of a mistake. But signed the contract with engineers in January and had to raise our first money, and we knew we could cover the first 2 payments ourselves. It was a 6-7 month contract, so it was March when we sort of took in capital. But I think the biggest fundraising advice I would give is don't focus on fundraising, don't focus on investors. Build a business so good that the investors come to you, because that will happen.
Great advice. I fully agree with that. I think that's the goal, or that should be the goal for any entrepreneur, right? Build your garden, and the bugs and the butterflies will come to you, right?
Exactly.
And I think with the power of social media today, it's not easy, but it's a lot easier, right? Yep. You can tell your story, you can show what you've been building, and people will reach out to you, right? I've had some people offer in my company, so there is a lot of power. I think definitely. I always try and talk about how important it is as a founder these days to do stuff like this. Come, make videos, come on podcasts, right? Because it's just like it shows everyone your story.
Yep.
But one thing that I just remembered when we were at lunch is, and for anyone watching or listening, you might not have understood what he just said, but you signed up for a contract with developers that you did not have enough money to pay for, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, it's like, I literally have to go and raise money or else the whole thing's going to fall apart. It's not like, damn, we need money to keep growing it. It's like, I can't pay the bills unless I convince someone to give me their money, right?
Yeah.
What kind of stress does that put on you? And
yeah, I definitely wouldn't.
How close was it?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend it. I think for me, I've always thought of myself as an entrepreneur, and I've always sort of my mind, I've always thought of myself as a successful person, except I had absolutely nothing to show for it, and I had a series of failures. So for me, I thought, okay, the thing I've really just never done is I've always been in school, I've always been in college, I've always been, living with my parents, and the expectation has been failure. With this one, this is going to succeed. The difference is I have to go balls to the wall and I have to take on some risk. And so we signed the contract, which didn't have the money to pay for. Had to raise kind of 150 grand, which at the time seemed like all the money in the world, and kind of did it month by month and spoke to well over 100 people.
100 people for that 150 grand.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Which we were first-time entrepreneurs, hadn't really had any successes, so it makes sense. But definitely, generally, wouldn't recommend taking something like that on. But I think as an entrepreneur, you just have to have a very high pain tolerance and let the pressure, like failure, kind of fuel you rather than break you.
Pressure is good, dude. The guy that I was sitting across from yesterday, right in your seat in our other podcast, he said, what was his saying? He said, it's a privilege to be under pressure.
Yeah.
And he would much rather be under pressure than be at ease, right? Have nothing going on. Also, pressure build diamonds is the common phrase. But, that's essentially the same as me coming up with a new product, like a new, athletic apparel item.
Yeah.
Placing an order for 100 grand worth of stuff, putting it on a credit card, and then I actually don't have 100 grand in the account, so I need to go figure out how to get that. So it's got to be stressful for sure. But I think, kind of throwing yourself in a pit and forcing yourself to climb out. If you're able to do it, you're going to be a much better person. You're going to be stronger. You're going to be more experienced. So I give you props for that. And now, what was the most? I don't know if you're allowed to talk about it, but how many different rounds have you done since then?
So we got acquired. So we sold the company in June of 2022.
But was there another round of fundraising before that acquisition?
Yeah. So it was technically all pre-seed, but these days you try and call each round as early as possible. So it was all pre-seed. We only raised about 1.3 million, and in separate tranches, but all technically one round, and then we got acquired very quickly within 10 months of launch, which was in June of 2022.
For how much?
I can't say. It was in the 8 figures. You
can't say. Yeah, I think it's on Google, right? Can I say it?
It was in the 8 figures. Right. That's all I can comment.
Dude did very well for himself at a young age, and so congrats, by the way. That's fucking sick.
Thank you.
And it's very impressive, right? Especially at a young age. Not only being so young, but so quickly after the original idea came up, right? Less than a year.
Yeah.
At that point, most people would, 99.99% of people would just take that money, go buy a house in LA, buy the car, right? Just sail into the sunset. But you got right back to work, right? Can you walk us through, how you kind of reintegrated yourself back into the company?
Yeah. So, nothing really changed in terms of day-to-day operation. I think the only thing that changed is we didn't have the stress of when our bank account was going to run dry. So not having to worry about runway was definitely a big relief. And I think just having a very large parent company also legitimized our business a ton. But I think definitely in terms of personally, I got far more hungry after the acquisition, and
really?
It showed me what was possible. Yeah,
interesting. I feel like it could be the opposite with a lot of people. That money could that meal could make you full, and you wouldn't be as driven. Right?
Yeah,
that's interesting. So your deal with the company that bought you guys, right? Yep. If I remember correctly, was you pretty much said, "How about this? Like, okay, you just bought my stake, but if I can grow this company to a certain level, right, much bigger, I get a piece back." Is that how it worked?
So generally, when you sell a company, you have an earnout, and earnouts could be slightly different. I think ours was milestone based, and some are time based. But the better you do, the more fruitful the acquisition becomes.
Can you dumb that down for anyone listening? My understanding of that, because a lot of people that watch might not be on their first business. They don't understand the business terms. So for example, would that be like, okay, you know, once the company hits 100 million valuation, you get 5% back, 250, you get 10% back, something like that?
So yeah, so I think all deals are structured slightly separately. The way it generally, slightly differently, the way it generally works is, you know, you sell your company, and it's very rare that the founder walks away at the acquisition, because generally founders very important to the business, and so
Absolutely.
so obviously, you know, the buyer doesn't want that. So the acquisition happens. You know, generally there's a cash and stock component, and then, you know, you get the wire for the cash and you get the stock, and then that's done. But then generally you'll have kind of an additional component that you can earn into, which is called an earn out. And so that will either be time based, so over 1, 2, 3 years, usually 3 years, or it can be milestone based. So at, you know, X million in revenue, you get this amount. You know, at Y million revenue, you get this amount. So yeah, we obviously had an earn out, and the business grew very, very quickly. We grew about 9x last year.
Jesus.
So it's
Wild.
yeah.
So how do you not, is there ever a feeling of, is there any sort of regret with how much you sold it all? Or is it like, no, like it's doing really well now,
Yeah.
and I got to have a little bit of security, and I have the tools needed now to continue to scale to a point where I probably wouldn't have been able to do it myself? Like, what's your thought process now looking back on it?
Yeah, I think we were extremely lucky. It was an amazing and life-changing acquisition. So I have no regrets. I think, you know, we knew what we were getting ourselves into, and the trade-off of selling a business is, you know, in every trade, it's, you know, each person generally thinks they're the winner in a trade. You know, if you're selling something, you think it's probably worth less than you're selling for, and if someone's buying something, they think it's probably worth more than they're buying for. So I think, you know, the acquisition has it was amazing for us. It's also been amazing for the parent company. The business has grown a ton.
And it's got a lot more to go. Seems like there's no
I
slowing
think
down right now, right?
It's got a lot more to go. And, you know, we were very lucky because we could take some risk off the table, and also benefit our team and investors a ton, and then also still have upside, you know, if the business continues to grow.
Nice, dude. That's great.
Yeah. But I think I think the sadder stories, you know, are not the stories where, you know, you sell a company too early and it grows and grows. I think I mean, if you look at Reddit, they sold, you know, which is about to IPO, they sold for 10 million. It's now IPO for 5 billion. But Steve Huffman, who was one of the founders and is now the CEO, that they just released in the S1, he was paid 193 million last year. So I think that's, you know, he's probably quite happy. I think those stories are that's an extreme example with Reddit, but I think those stories are generally less sad than, you know, the .com stories where
Absolutely.
you could have sold for a massive amount of money. And
what is that? There was one company recently that I saw an article on. Someone offered to buy them for a few billion, and recently they just sold for like 19 million.
Yeah.
They just completely shit the bed, and the founder just got greedy.
Yeah, I think
missed his opportunity. I guess
totally.
Like timing is everything.
I think Clubhouse is probably the best example of a failure of founder greed. You know, Clubhouse is the audio platform.
Maybe I'm
where
too young.
It was big in COVID. I was never really on it either, but they were offered $4 billion from Twitter to buy it, and then it fell off a cliff. Twitter just made Spaces themselves. Twitter Spaces took over. Clubhouse fell off a cliff. It's worthless now, and, you know, the founders could have walked away with, you know, billion each.
Generational, multi-generational amounts of money. That's wild. That's too bad.
I know.
I mean, Yahoo is another story.
Yep.
There's a lot of stories out there like that. And it's hard because when you're the owner, and it's literally your baby.
Yep.
You have fed it, you've grown it, you've sacrificed for it.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like, on one end, a lot of people who've never started a business before might be like, bro, $100 million, bro, what the fuck? Like, take that, right?
Yeah.
Dude, this is your kid.
Yeah.
It feels the same as like a kid that you created with your partner, right? A real child. And it's hard, and money's awesome, but then what do you do? once
Yeah.
you have the money, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure it's awesome that you got to stay on and continue building what you were really passionate about, what you really enjoyed, what you found challenging, and what made life exciting. Because let's say you did walk off with your check, however big it was,
Yeah.
right? You know, what do you do at that point? Like,
Yeah.
you could go. That's a question I have for you. Is, you know, in a second, what did you spend it on and stuff, or maybe you haven't yet. But you know, the most enjoyable part of entrepreneurship, I think everyone gets into it with this idea of getting rich.
Yeah.
Right, I started my first company. I want to be rich.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure it was the same for you. Quickly, you realize, like, dude, it's just more fun building. It's
Yeah,
like it's like a
100%.
video game. But yeah, so my next question is, what's it like when that wire hits your account? What are the hours leading up to it? I've asked this to all the founders who have had exits, and they tell me they're refreshing all day long. And
Yeah.
what's that like when you first get to see like the fruits of your labor?
Well, it's actually quite underwhelming, to be honest.
Really?
I think at least it was for me. It's kind of like, you know, oh well, my life hasn't really. You look at it, you're like, well, my life hasn't really changed. So I think it's. So I didn't even have I opened a new bank account. I didn't even have a card that was connected to that bank account for like 2 months or something. But I hadn't had a paycheck. I'd never filed taxes before that. Like that was the first.
Never filed taxes. That's wild.
Yeah, that was
shit.
the first you know, money I ever made. So it was it like I want to say it's a great feeling, obviously, because it is, but but legitimately it was actually quite underwhelming. There was no feeling, and I think that builds into exactly what you're saying. You know, you do start off like I start off in the same way. Your motivation is money and building a massive business. I think that's just like natural. That's ego, and we all have it. Generally, entrepreneurs, we have bigger egos than most. So that's, I don't think that's a bad thing. But genuinely, your sort of motivation does change. It becomes bigger than just the paycheck, and especially once you get the first sort of paycheck like that, you realize that it really was never about the money. It's just about the process of building, which is going to sound like bullshit to everyone else, but it genuinely is true.
It's fun, dude. It's really fucking fun. It's just like a video game. You actually get to level up your character.
Yeah.
There's multiple challenges. You can take one quest at a time and level your character really slowly, or you can do 5 at a time and move really fast, but it's risky and it's more work and it's more stressful.
100%.
That brings up another good question is, what drives you right now that money is kind of out of the picture?
Yeah, I think what drives me, I think it's genuinely what I want to be doing. I love building. It's always been my passion, and I was never, as a kid, I was never the strongest kid. I was never the fastest. I was never the smartest. I was always, I was never picked first for any of the sports events. I was also never the kid getting A's in class. I was always very middle of the pack to bottom. But I always kind of had this thing which I thought that I was the best at, and I thought made me special, which was, my sort of skill and passion for building. I just, never really had anything to show for it. So
I love that you say that too, because you feel like extremely confident on the inside. You're like, I can do fucking anything, but maybe on paper, once again, you haven't done anything yet. So it's just a matter of time, and you have to create that first thing.
Well,
but I agree with you on that.
Yeah, no. So I think it definitely. It definitely sounds quite cocky, but it's I think I always sort of had this mindset of I got rejected from pretty much all the colleges that I applied to. I got rejected from pretty much every job I applied to, and every single internship. I didn't get any interviews, and I just could not understand. I could not understand why these people didn't see this thing in me. But in reality, I was a below average student with not great grades, very few extracurriculars, not on any of the top sports teams, and I genuinely hadn't done anything. But I think it's just the mindset you got to have of, as an entrepreneur, that you're the best.
I fully agree, dude. And I like how you kind of added in that you understand how, to a lot of people, it sounds arrogant or cocky or something. In reality, it just is like unwavering self-determination and belief, which I wish a lot more people could have. I think when you say something like that to someone who has no confidence in themselves or no reassurance, it comes off the wrong way, and it like attacks their identity, and so they get upset about it. They're offended, right? But in reality, it's just you believing in yourself, and I think there's a lot to be said about that. I think a lot of people listening and watching, if you should always believe in yourself, even if you do have nothing as on your track record, right? How do you go about balancing, though, this extreme self-confidence that you have deep inside you with also being humble? That's something I'm trying to, do myself.
Yeah, I think it's hubris and humility. You gotta balance the two, and I think you have to you have to have that unwavering self-confidence and self-determination, but you also have to be humble enough to understand that there's a luck element, and understand that you don't know everything, and understand that you probably don't even know how much you don't know. So, and you can learn a lot from other people. So I think it's an ongoing process of, like you, I'm also still trying to learn that, but I think part of that is I try and listen. I generally am very quick to jump in and talk and interrupt. Nowadays I try and sit back and listen and think before I respond. And I think you do have to also understand, appreciate, and be grateful for the luck element, because there's always a luck element. But yeah, you definitely have to balance the hubris, the confidence, and the humility and humble aspect.
I agree, and it's a challenge because you need the confidence to go out and consistently take risks. If you have no confidence in yourself and you don't think to yourself, I'm him or whatever, like you're not going to be able to constantly take risks. But at the same time, you can't learn if you think you're the best in the room. So it is a constant challenge and a constant process of self-reflection. I think that's really important.
Totally. And I think, the other thing is you got to remind yourself, most people don't believe in you. And so if you don't believe in yourself, then who's going to believe in you? Probably no one. So you have to believe in yourself. You have to have that self-confidence.
100%. What, very well put, by the way. I fully agree. You should see my comments.
Yeah,
TikTok,
I'm sure. I'm not active on social media, so I don't have comment sections or anything. I've read a couple of comment sections on like articles written about me. It's generally trying to avoid that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's those things I think are a great reminder that most people want failure for others and don't want success for others.
It's so fucking crazy. I think you'll like this. There's this study that they did. It might be really old. It might be somewhat recent. I don't know the exact date on it, but they threw all these monkeys in this pit together.
Yeah.
And they put a ladder in the middle. And then at the top of the ladder was all like these bananas, right? The prize. And one monkey started climbing up the ladder to try and get the prize, right? Elevate himself, right?
Yeah.
You could consider this like building a business, right? Going for that high paycheck reward, elevating yourself. And then what they did was they threw like a rock at the monkey, or they threw a stick at it. And then all of a sudden the other monkeys saw that and they started doing it too. So now in this pit, all the monkeys are all in like this frenzy. And every time one of them tries to go up there and get a banana, they all knock him down.
Damn.
It's like they'd rather, and the thing is, like, if he went up there and got the bananas, like, everyone could eat. Right? There's plenty of them, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good lesson about human nature. For some weird reason, people, if you, like, I give advice online all the time, right? And you could say it hasn't been verified yet, right? Validated. Because I'm not that successful yet. I haven't had a huge exit. But it would be in your best interest as a viewer or a normal person for that advice to be correct, but people would rather believe it's wrong. They would rather knock you down than succeed themselves. It's unfortunate and it's sad, but at the same time, I also think it's important because that's what separates people like yourself who can go achieve awesome things. You're almost like built different in a way, and it's not something that you just like create one day. It's usually instilled in you from day one. Curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I totally.
How many people have like doubted you, friends, family?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting that story about monkeys, and it doesn't surprise me because actually, if you look at human history, for really the past, humans have been around 10,000 years. Really, the past 9,850 years, we have been utterly barbaric, and the Aztecs would sacrifice people and all crowd around whilst they threw them down the stairs to their deaths. The English, we would tie people limb by limb to horses and literally rip them apart limb by limb, and then tar and feathers. So I think like humans generally, for the majority of our existence, have been quite brutal. It's only really the past 150 years that actually we've been quite civilized. And even if you go to you make contact with these tribes in the Amazon who've never had human contact, the first thing they're going to do is kill you.
Yeah.
And then ask questions later. So does it surprise me? No, it doesn't. I think like it generally is human nature, unfortunately. I do think though that it's definitely comment sections and all that sort of thing. Like I think that's generally a very loud minority, minority that just really shouts quite loudly.
Hates himself, wants to put it on everyone else.
Yeah, I think it's very very sad, and I think it's a big problem. Personally, I as I said, always had that sort of self-confidence. Like never had. You probably face it more on a daily basis being like more of a public figure. I was never really a public figure, so I never had to see the comment section or whatever. But definitely, I think post acquisition sort of saw the way people reacted and sort of treat me now and talk to me now, and definitely their perspective of me, I guess, has changed, but my perspective of myself has not, because I always thought
I've always
I was
been
this
this
person.
guy. That's probably what you're thinking. You're like, oh, now,
Yeah.
okay, now you believe I've always been this guy.
Exactly.
It's interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
By the way, what's your current title in the business? And then what is the most important part of your job for everyone listening?
Yeah, so still CEO of FanFix, and then also Chief Digital Officer of SuperOrdinary, which is our parent company. And SuperOrdinary is doing about 350 million revenue and raised about 100 plus million at 800 million valuation. So it's got 600-700 employees, so big company. And yeah, what was the second part of the question? I missed.
What's the most? Okay, so you're the man in
Yeah.
charge, right? You are the man in charge. You're the president. You're the king. Like you have the most responsibility. You have the most to risk, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many things that you have to do on a daily basis. But what would you say the most important part of your job is?
I think you have the ultimate responsibility. I think generally the founder, the CEO, is probably not the hardest worker, but really you just have the stress of the entire thing, weighing down you. There's sort of a blissful ignorance in in kind of just having to work and not having to worry about like the big picture. But I think there's a sense of responsibility, which, especially once the company gets to a certain size, like we have, I have 70 people on FanFix to take care of, and their jobs are reliant on me making the right decisions. So that's a huge amount of pressure and responsibility, and I think that definitely can weigh you down. I think you have to have a very high pain tolerance to deal with that.
Yeah, I bet, and it's tough, but that's why you get the big checks at the end of the day, right? There's so many people out there, all over social media. I love how you said, small minority with a super loud voice. There's people out there that are like very against the idea of certain individuals making a lot of money, but at the end of the day, those people have never put themselves in a position where everyone is riding on you, right? Everyone's ability to eat is on you, right? You have the most stressful job, at the end of the day. How do you manage that stress?
Yeah, and I do also think it's about risk. I think there's a huge risk element that comes with being an entrepreneur, and the risk is not just starting the thing. The risk just keeps on going and going and going, and also Brian Chesky has, the Airbnb founder he's one of my favorite founders and has a brilliant clip where he talks about just failing fundraising Airbnb and reads some of the emails. Now Airbnb is an $80 million company. He reads some of the emails from the rejections they got, which I think is very cool. But then he talks about also how, as a founder, you have to be sort of the one that, you're leading the pack, climbing the mountain, and you have to convince them that the peak is there. And when everyone's tired and when everyone wants to quit and stop, you have to just convince them to just keep going 20 feet further. And I love that clip from him. So definitely think it's about the risk element and also just being able to motivate a group of people and drive them towards a common goal is crucial. But yeah, in terms of how managers stress, I think that's something you've got to learn. I think I've never sweated the small things. Like, I never worried about grades and tests and things like that. I do think it just comes from consistently putting yourself in a position where you're doing things that you don't want to be doing. And then eventually you learn that you can overcome the stress and, you're bigger than the stress. So yeah, I think you just got to push and challenge yourself, and you will eventually learn self-respect and,
that you can handle whatever challenges in front of you, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Dude, perfect. I think, a lot of people probably look at a guy with your amount of responsibility and success, and in their head, they think, well, this guy just always knew the answer. This guy always knew what he was doing, right? It's almost like you had a secret genie following you around telling you what to do. The reality is the problems get much bigger. You're just more equipped to handle them now,
totally.
Right? Like, you have all the experience from the past. But I'm assuming there is a new massive issue that comes up once a day, once a week, once a month, bigger and bigger, that you're just like, fuck, I have no idea what I'm going to do to fix this, but I will figure it out.
Yeah, I think, every single morning, it's the same thing. It's the same thing every morning. I turn on my phone and there are a million texts about 5 different potentially business ending problems. And, the amount of times over the past 3 years that this business has been about to fail, or there's been a problem that is going to probably take us down, has been countless. I think you just, you learn with time to be able to take a step back and breathe and think before you react, and be a bit more pensive rather than reactive. But yeah, I think it just also, you have to, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to manage your personal stress. It's a bit cliche, but I'm a big believer in, and I know you are as well, ice baths. Ice bath nearly daily. Also a big believer in exercise. I think that stuff it's a great life lesson, and a great business lesson as well. You literally are throwing yourself in the fire.
Real stress, like it's physical stress to distract from the mental stress, you could say.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, with an ice bath, you can't just get in there and grit your teeth. Like, if you're in there for 7 minutes, you can't just grit your teeth. You're gonna be shivering and shit.
Yeah.
And it also won't benefit. You have to let go and breathe and relax into it. And I think that's a great metaphor for business. You have to be more pensive than reactive, and you have to slow down and respond in a calm and diligent manner rather than a panicked and reactive manner.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and in some cases, finding like peace in the chaos, right? I think, curious if you've ever had an experience similar to this, but I remember when I was finishing up my presidency in my fraternity in college, right? I had it was a couple weeks before our finals, junior year business school, which was like the most important series of tests you take all through college, right? These are the ones that matter. I also had this massive presentation coming up. I had just gotten cheated on a couple days earlier, and I'm literally sitting in class, in my business class. I think it was BCom, and all the different like individuals were presenting their semester project.
Yep.
And I was up in about 20 minutes, and my phone just starts blowing up. So I step outside because I'm getting calls from my national advisor who never calls me. I step outside. I pick up the phone. I go, "Yo, what's going on, man?" He goes, we weren't really doing anything bad, but like we got in this massive hazing investigation, and I get a call from my national advisor saying like, Nationals is on a plane right now. You're fucked. Good luck.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to you. And then he just hangs up the phone. And I just remember walking into the bathroom, looking in the mirror, bro, like just got cheated on, like going through crazy emotions, you know. For anyone who wasn't in Greek life, you were in Greek life, right?
Yeah.
For anyone who wasn't in Greek life, the significance of that phone call is the worst phone call you can ever get in your entire life, because you don't know why you got it. Like maybe someone was doing something that you weren't aware of. You really don't know how serious the situation is. You know, you're not the one that's taking care of all the younger guys, right? You're the one making the big boy decisions, right? So you have committees and you have people in charge of different stuff. So it's the worst phone call you can get. And essentially now you're the guy who's either going to save your team. For me, it was 180 people. Or you're the guy that gets your house kicked off campus and everyone fucking hates you for ruining their college experience. So incredibly devastating phone call to get. And I remember just walking into the bathroom and looking in the mirror. And by the way, like I said, most important business presentation of my life is in 15 minutes now. Yeah. And I just remember looking in the mirror thinking like, damn, this is a lot of pressure. Yep. And then I nodded my head and I was like, I'm built for pressure. And it was like, it was almost like fun. Yeah. It was like so shitty. But in the moment, looking back on it, it was like, damn, this is the biggest challenge I've had yet. It's going to be tough. I also had a business at the same time, so it was a lot going on. But have you ever had experiences where were similar to that, where you're like going through hell and you're thinking to yourself like, damn, this is a lot, but number one, I can do this. And when I get through this, this is going to be the coolest story ever. I like to tell myself I'm in a story sometimes, and this will be a big part.
Yeah, no, totally. I think you know, I was graduating college same time as the acquisition, and I was flying back and forth from New Orleans, where I went to school in LA, and none of my friends knew about the acquisition, and none of the people who do the acquisition knew that I was in school. So it was kind of these two lives I was balancing, and yeah, it was incredibly stressful. I think, and obviously the business was almost collapsing at various points then, and we were almost running out of money. But when we sold, we actually had probably a month's runway, 2 months, a couple months runway left in the bank, and with the lawyer fees, we would have been probably bankrupted. So that was very stressful. I think generally it's Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong, and generally all at once. And life is incredibly hard, and I think that's why you have to do things on a daily basis that prepare you for the difficulty of life. And life is going to kick your ass, and it's so hard that everyone you love will die, and you will die as well. So it's it's so incredibly risky that that you've already lost the ultimate battle, which is like you will die at some point.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love how you put that.
Yeah, I think that's got to be a mindset, and you got to know that it's times will get tough. In business you'll get your ass kicked. In your personal life you'll get your ass kicked. In your romantic love life you get your ass kicked. So you just have to prepare yourself, I think, on a daily basis to get that tough phone call or to see that tough email. And you got to understand that life is incredibly hard.
Dude,
you just got to be strong.
Yeah, I love how you just put that. Actually, I've never heard someone word it that way. You will get your ass kicked, whether it's in your relationship, in business, at the end of your life. Like you're going to lose eventually. Yeah, totally. Damn, that's great. I'm gonna clip that too, because that's a good one. Let's talk about how hard it is, though. What it takes as a founder. You built it with your partner until the day you sold it, and it was just you two, right?
We had a few. I think the team was about 6 or 7 by the time we sold.
Okay. Yeah. What about like the first? How was it? You and your partner. How many months until it was you got your first employee?
I think so. We had sort of founding team of my partner and I. Then we brought on couple other sort of founding partners, and then a big name celebrity co-founder, Cameron Dallas, and that was I think 8 months post founding the business, and then we got our first full-time in-house employee, because the majority of it was outsourced. We outsourced everything at first. Our first full-time in-house employee, I think, was probably 5 months post-launch.
Nice. But I'm assuming you were doing everything up until then, right? Doing all the back-end work. You're doing the meetings with the dev team.
Yep.
You're strategizing sales.
Yep.
You're figuring out how to bring on big influencers. Like, you're doing everything all at once, and you have to do that right at the beginning.
Yeah, as a founder, you are never too big for simple tasks. Like, you should be doing everything. You can't have an ego about it. I was, answering customer service emails and phone calls, moderating content in my spare time, as well as, sales and client relationships and fundraising and hiring and firing and all that sort of stuff. So I think you, as a founder, it's mostly, and especially in the early days, I think towards as a business gets big and you get recognition, it gets a little bit more glamorous, but and you get to do things like this, like do podcasts. But generally in the early, and talk about yourself, but in the early days, it's like incredibly unglamorous, and you really are just basically scrubbing the toilets, metaphorically and sometimes physically. So yeah, you have to be prepared to do everything yourself. And there also is no people ask, oh, how many hours a week do you work? How many hours a day do you work? As a founder, the clock never starts and it never stops. From the second you wake up until the second your head hits the pillow, you're switched on, you're working, and
always.
Yeah, and you have to be prepared for that. Absolutely,
dude. Yeah, because people look at entrepreneurs, especially with all these entrepreneur influencers these days, these creators that are saying, "Oh yeah, I quit my 9 to 5 and I get to live my life and travel." Bro, I don't know what you guys are doing that allows you to do that, but you're not building anything. Like, you're selling a course, right? Building a real business. You're in the trenches, and it's still like I know the same for you. We would never trade it for the world.
No, totally.
But you're working every day, like you said, second you get up till second you go to bed. That doesn't mean you can't have fun. I'm sure every once in a while you were still going out, seeing your friends, but like, you're not playing video games.
No.
You're not watching a series on Netflix. You are working all the time. And you're getting nothing in return for the first 6 months or a year or 5 years, depending on the company, So I think it's really important, and that needs to be said. And a lot of people out there who want to be entrepreneurs because, maybe they have the wrong reason behind it. They want to be an entrepreneur because they want more freedom. That's not going to happen. Sorry. At least not for a long time. And you have to be willing to, like you said, scrub the toilets. I think that's perfect. And you need to look for other people too that are willing to do that as well. Like, I always tell my employees, I got a couple now, I say, like, listen, I would never ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, but don't think that you're going to come in here and just do one thing. Like, if I need you to, like, drive somewhere and set up a merch tent at, like, a race, like, you're going to have to do that. And you want people that are down for that. You want people that have that mindset of, I'll take on any challenge, whatever it takes, right? Totally. Whatever it takes to grow the business. That's how you build a team. And that's a question I had is, so much of the success of a business is based on its team. It's not just the founder. It's definitely not the idea. It's the team, right? So how do you build a good team? What do you look for when recruiting people? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so I think the loyalty aspect is incredibly important, and also you have to lead from the front. And I always say to my employees, I never want to hear the words, "That's not my job," and I will never say the words, "That's not my job." You have to lead from the front, and you have to also, once your team gets big and the company gets big, I think it's easy for people to forget that you were the one that founded this and built this, and you were doing not only their job but every job. at one point. And so I think that's something you have to constantly remind them, and you constantly have to, as a founder, you should be earning the respect of your team. It's not something that is just automatically granted. So yeah, we look for people that are incredibly motivated and also willing to work at a startup for better and for worse. Willing to, if we launch our V2 and the platform went down basically for 2 days and everyone worked Thanksgiving, and that's just the reality of startup life. But so yeah, you have loyalty is very important. Willingness to do everything and anything you're tasked with. Willingness to work extremely hard, all very important. And yeah, I think I like what you're saying about the selling courses, and like generally it's very difficult. It's not easy, and if social media makes it seem easy, and generally the guy with the Lamborghini and fancy watch who's telling you how easy it is, who's also trying to sell you on something, probably don't believe that guy. It's a lot harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I agree with everything you just said. I think that's great. I think that's really valuable information. Well, we're kind of wrapping it up here near the end, so I have one final question for you.
Yeah.
It's a challenging question. I like to ask it to everyone. I hope that you never have to go through this, but if everything went to shit, say the economy collapsed, you got sued, I don't know. Somehow you lost the business, you lost all your money. How would you restart from zero? The only thing you have is your experience, and we'll say you have your connections to it, the relationships you built along the way. What would you do?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what we're saying earlier, and life is going to kick your ass, and you're going to get your ass kicked in every aspect of life. You have to be prepared for that. I think it's kind of the memento mori, remember you will die, that stuff. You have to accept that's already happened. That terrible stuff will happen. I think you have to be mentally resilient enough to take that. I think you have to build your sort of business and in a way where it's also extremely resilient and can withstand things that might lead to that. But ultimately, I think if you have the mental fortitude to do it once, you can do it again. I also think it's the best test of an entrepreneur. Not only, it doesn't have to necessarily be that extreme. It can be, you sold a company once and you did very well off it. Can you go and do it again? A lot of people can't. So I think it's the best test for an entrepreneur. Can you go and do it again? Can you rebuild? Can you replicate? And there's always a luck element. So I think that is the best determiner for how much was luck versus how much was skill.
Dude, perfect. I fully agree. Well, I think that's the perfect way to wrap it up, dude. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. I hope everyone else learned a lot. I feel incredibly blessed that I get to do this as part of my job because I get to learn and hopefully provide value to some other people out there. But dude, thank you.
Awesome.
This has been
great.
Thank you so much. Guys, if you I'll leave his. I mean, you're not really on social media, so I guess I can't really link anything. But if you guys have any super pressing questions, comment them, and maybe I'll hit Harry up, and maybe we can do a part 2 in a couple of years and see what the updates are. So
I sometimes check Instagram DMs, so
there you go. All right, dude. Well, yeah, fuck yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming. Guys, SquidTalk Pod, remember to subscribe, leave a like, and leave a comment. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.